Okay, thank you. First of all, I have to say that Sejal is a very hard worker. She just run here from Hsinchu, from participating in GovZero hackathon. How was it?
I didn't know it was 1 hour away.
Well,
I took a cab without knowing where I was going, and it actually took me 2 hours. So finally, I made it. It was great. It was great. Amazing people, and probably a lot of them are gonna come tomorrow here.
yeah,
Yeah.
glad to have you here. I would start from maybe everybody can introduce yourself a little bit, talking about why you're here, talking about public goods ecosystems and stuff, your experience. Why don't we start from maybe Sejal as well?
Yes. First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I am Sejal, and I started my journey in public goods space through Green Pill Network. Green Pill Network is a community built around the Green Pill podcast, which was started by Kevin Owocki. And through that, I then recently joined Gitcoin because a lot of work that we were doing at Green Pill Network sort of aligns with Gitcoin, and we think ourselves as the local arm of Gitcoin, where we want to translate and everything that Gitcoin is doing. How is that how that can actually be useful to local people? So yeah, that's pretty much my introduction in the space, and that's what I do. Yeah.
Awesome. Jimmy?
Okay. Hi everyone, Jimmy from FabDAO. I'm the contributor layer. And what FabDAO do, like I think like Frank already described. And since the suggest here, I think the FabDAO community is the one which like embed the layer like green pill like idea here in Taiwan. Yes, that's it.
I love FabDAO.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Abby?
hey folks, Abby here. So I have a long, I guess, story into how I got into this. I'll just be as concise as possible. Think ETH Denver, 2019. I grabbed 7-Eleven pizzas with Kevin Owocki, and he just got me really excited about the space. And that was pre-Zerion. Then, long story short, I'm the product lead as my day job at Zerion. We're building, a Web3 wallet, but we're also building out APIs for other companies like Uniswap. Gitcoin Passport as well has been a big, I guess, partner of ours in helping both amplify the product as well as the APIs. So like if you use Uniswap or Rainbow Wallet, a lot of their transactions, portfolio history, all of that is also built on Zerion's infrastructure. So I do that as my day job, but then we also incubated Hydra Ventures and Social Graph Ventures. So Hydra Ventures is how I'm most closely affiliated with the whole, I'd say public goods space. Because we incubated investment DAOs like Beaker DAO that invest into other DeSci DAOs like Vita DAO, Molecule and whatnot. So like for us, our focus has been, let's grow the GDP of, both open source as well as public goods projects. And let's almost like bring in LPs and other, fund of funds that are interested in the space, more from a value added perspective and just, make and incubate other DAOs. So that's been the latest, but also me, David, and a few others here. We were at Zuzalu recently. So that was the network state that happened in Turkey, and then before that in Montenegro. So that was awesome, just with Juan and Vitalik and everyone else kind of, figuring out where the space goes next, especially in DeSci. So that was like the kind of latest involvement from mine.
That's amazing because you're coming from the application angle and the venture angle into the public space system. Just one quick question just popped up. Where does the money come from for example, Social Graph Ventures? What are their intentions that are putting money into a public space ecosystem?
Great question. I mean, it's really just operators and like people who are involved in the space. For example, for Hydra Ventures, the biggest LPs were this group of angels called Daedalus. Daedalus is like a very highly involved VC fund. We had 1KX. 1KX is one of the other funds. But then honestly, for funds like Social Graph, it was just Stani from Lens and Aave, or like the Forecaster ecosystem, or like CyberConnect ecosystem. A lot of the social graph companies that are building in the space, their founders and employees from their teams were the largest checks into the fund because they also want to be involved in like the day-to-day operations. They want to bring in deals. And for Hydra Ventures, recently what we did is we did this request for DAOs. Essentially, we believe that if you have an idea for a DAO, an investment DAO that you want to create, say in account abstraction or say in climate finance, right? you should be able to spin that DAO up, and we help you with all the legal, with all the regulatory, whatever kind of bottlenecks you might get. So like a lot of the people that we've onboarded for investing are very much like lawyers, investors, founders in this space.
Yeah, people who really want to see changes in the space, I would say. Yeah. I understand that our session is mostly about tooling, but I want to start from a higher level thing. What do you guys think is a vibrant public space ecosystem, public goods ecosystem? And what do you guys, maybe you guys already have an example in mind, or which is your own ecosystem that may be so. And what are the necessary steps to build a vibrant public goods ecosystem, in your opinion? I will start from Sejal again.
Yes. I definitely think that first and foremost, the most important thing for any ecosystem is to define what public goods mean to them, or what are the public goods for that ecosystem. And then to make it vibrant, I think definitely community, right? A strong sense of community where people are supporting each other, and they sort of understand that what this means to them. Yeah, I think even if like there are a few things that an ecosystem has, that it can make a vibrant public goods ecosystem. And definitely I feel like there's a lot of work happening around impact measurement, and defining the projects, the impact they have. Yeah, some sort of accountability. I think these are very minimum things that are required for any ecosystem to make it vibrant without getting into a lot of complexity.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I'll follow up with one question first. Because you talked about community, you talked about a sense of either belonging or a sense of interest that's shared commonly. How do you, because for example, Gitcoin has a pretty loose boundary, I would say, because there are a lot of different projects within. How do you define the boundaries of such a community of such interest? Or at what level, how loose or tight should we define the boundaries for the interest to be concrete and for the funding to come in, and for what would be your suggestion on that?
Great question. So Gitcoin has two parts to it. Like Kevin always says, there is one part which is credibly neutral, right? Which is Grand Stack, which is the Hello protocol. And there is other part which are different programs, right? So each program, for example, ETH infrastructure, open source community round, or Web3 community and education, there's climate round, there is Latin America round, right? So each program, it has its own community, right? So people, they have their, in each program, they are active and they sort of like support each other. So I think it kind of, they have their own values, right? So it's sort of self-defining. It becomes self-defining when people start identifying themselves with these projects or programs, right? So I think that is it. Does that answer your question?
That is actually very, very straightforward, because Gitcoin has become a platform for people to use. People bring their own communities and funding sources and all that, and use the tool as a platform for people to gather interest, basically.
Yes, exactly. That is why I think this is sort of narrative we are pushing, and we want people to sort of think about. Like it has two parts, right? So people sort of sometimes confuse this, but program, it has its values. It has, a lot of humanness in it, whereas the protocol side of things is credibly neutral, right? Which doesn't really involve any sort of value. It's very inclusive and accessible. Anybody, irrespective of where they come from, what they do, anything, they can, use it. Yeah.
Of course, makes total sense. How about you, Gimmy? What do you think is a vibrant community? What's your experience with that?
Yeah, so I'm totally agree with like Sejal. Like for the ecosystem, is all about people. It's all about like member, all about the community, and it's not really about like a donation value, like under certain like institution, like or mechanism. It's not really about that. It's about people, and to build the vibrant like ecosystem, we need the people who like really passion, and like because like everyone need to have the sense of like honor and want to put their effort like into this community. And for example, like we can have the funding the company here in Taipei. Like it's a really good like indicator that we do have the good community here in Taipei.
what do you think is necessary for people to have interest or to build this community? What are the necessary steps or necessary milestones that you have to build, especially for public good space?
I think you should have the passion to like brainwash like someone.
Brainwash?
Yeah, exactly. Like it's like a like religion, here, like a like non-profit, like stupid stuff. Like you need to like talking and provide some material, like reading, like to let everyone like understand like people are kind of associated like into this topic, and
Understood.
people would change like their like mindset.
Somehow still comes back to people, comes back to core mission, I guess.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Abby, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, I'll just follow up on some of the points. You asked for milestones, right? I feel like one interesting milestone usually is like, can this community be self-sustaining even beyond its initial founding or core organizations or members kind of, pushing it forward? And we saw this happen maybe last cycle with a lot of the refi space, right? Like with refi, you had a few players, KlimaDAO, Tucan, all these companies that came up, Gitcoin, and a lot of the other, I'd say like Kernel and public goods network and a lot of the other precursors to what we have now. They really prop these networks up, and now we have a different landscape within the refi space. So I think that's one milestone. But coming back to what makes, I guess, public goods funding and companies and organizations really work. We can go into an example, say, within the longevity space, you have maybe Vita DAO and you have a lot of the other DAOs building in the space. They usually have almost cult-like members, right? Who are like really passionate about what they're doing, kind of following up on your point. But they also have on the other side, like, liquidity providers, whether it's with Gitcoin or it's, other investors, whether it's Brian Johnson, whoever it could be, right? Really also passionate about bringing these networks of people to bring their ideas to fruition. And a lot of times now you're seeing, for example, with them, they're having this network state called Italia coming up in January and February, where they're hosting that in a city called Prospera in an island in Honduras. Like they also have some sort of a event or some sort of like it could be an online community, an in-person event, but they usually have, that's I feel like the final milestone to say that, hey, like we've gone from like a group of individuals in a Discord kind of discussing our idea and putting it up in a, Gitcoin grants program to like, hey, we now have like a whole ecosystem of outsiders also interested in this space. So they have now invited, Web3 people, AI people, other researchers to come and contribute, right? So I feel like those are all probably characteristics you'd expect at the later stage of, a well-established public goods network.
Yeah. It's super interesting that because we're talking about tools, but here the most important pillar is still the people, is still the community, right? What are the biggest challenges? For example, let's say that the community all have a very strong core mission and a vision where they want to go, and people share very similar mindsets. Let's say we already have that. What are the biggest challenges to sustain such communities? Abby, do you want to start?
Sure. I mean, tooling is only as helpful as like the actual like governance, the actual values, the mission that you've kind of set up for your, DAO or organization, right? So I'd say like a lot of the tooling that exists, at least now, tries to solve for problems that don't exist yet, right? And when I say tooling, I really just mean like, hey, like we're some sort of like a coordination tool that's trying to make your job easier. I feel like a lot of this can just be done, as a sub-DAO or as, just a smaller group of people making decisions on behalf of like the rest of the organization, as long as they have a shared interest. So I'd say like the biggest tool that everyone really needs to use is more platforms like Gitcoin, and kind of like this frenzy, this positive kind of frenzy that you see with every Gitcoin grants round. I think that's really the biggest value add, like trying to see who are other people in your same space trying to build similar complementary solutions, forming, helpful communities and groups around you. A lot of the tooling that you need for that is just tooling that exists already, whether it's communication platforms or, whatnot. So I'd leave it to them to maybe answer more on like kind of what tooling they use on day-to-day basis.
Yeah, totally.
I'm confused. The question here is about the biggest challenge or
the challenges you would face to sustain a community somehow.
the challenges come from the people, like the number number. Like when the community grow bigger, and people get like conflicts, like always as always. And we can echo this to the previous talk by Meshbin. Like we have the godlike technology, but like the middle, like a middle age, like a mindset and like emotion stuff.
Right. What would be a very specific challenge that for FabDAO that happened in the past, and you basically, and how did you solve it?
Like
Sorry, I'm going off script.
no worry, no worry.
asking.
Like everything is challenge. Like we solve it like in a very centralized way. Like we call it FabDAO is DAO DAO, but we are not decentralized. We are not autonomous. We are not even an organization. Like we are like anti-DAO to be honest. So whenever there's like we're kind of like interest group, like to be honest.
Understood.
Yeah, I can talk about a recent experiment that we did at Green Pill Network, and then we realized what went wrong with that whole thing. So the experiment was essentially we forked the grand stack version and we integrated hypercerts in it. So and we ran a grant round. So when you see an application or a grant, you will also see the hypercerts displayed of that grant, basically the chapter. Green Pill has different chapters: Green Pill India, Green Pill China, Green Pill, Spain, different chapters. So each of them had a grant and with a hypercerts. But when the round actually started, so our hypothesis was that people who will support these projects will look at the hypercerts, and depending on that, they will make the decision whether they want to support this or not, right? But when we actually saw the results, it went very different. So we realized like people did not really look at the hypercerts. They just went ahead and supported. Let's say I am from Green Pill Japan and I have asked my community to support me. They just supported me without really bothering about the hypercerts displayed there, right? And that is not because they don't care. That is also because they don't really understand the importance of it. They don't really understand how to actually evaluate or see, right? So this is a challenge, right? Which means the whole thing is not very intuitive. It's not something that people easily understand. And we were actually discussing this in the community. One of the community members gave such a good solution, like a potential solution. So she suggested that when people look at the grants, how about the grant with the most hypercerts is dark green, right? The color changes with the number of hypercerts, right? Which sort of becomes a little easy for me or anybody as a donor or supporter who comes and who wants to see which project they want to support. And they just have to look at the color. And the color which is the darkest is the one has the highest number of hypercerts. It's just a little difference. And that just didn't click, right? So I believe that anything, when we think about these tools, I'm someone who works a lot with people who are local and not very technical, because I am not very technical. I feel like anything which is intuitive and sort of it has to be intuitive. We can't really assume that people will understand this, right? So yeah, this has been my recent experience with something that did not work.
Totally. I think one thing you're talking about is also let the demand, also let the need to emerge from the community, and then apply something to that. And so my follow-up question to that will be: how do you observe such demand? How do you observe? How do you keep yourself on the pulse, on tap of what the community needs? How do you observe that? Anyone can.
Sure, I can jump in. I mean, there's two perspectives here. From the product perspective, like this is more maybe with Zarion's community, right? Like we have ambassadors or we have people, kind of like what Sejal was saying, like there's a lot of different like alpha signals that you could create yourself. You could have the coolest dashboards, but oftentimes it's the qualitative data that's the hardest to actually like obtain. So this could be just like through community calls, whatever kind of metrics and events you'd want to have. But this is, I guess, on the product level, right? Like kind of how you want to obtain information on how people are using your product or interacting within your community. I think within the venture DAO side, what we've done is we just have options grants every month based on your contributions, right? So within Hydra Ventures, it's not just about bringing deals, but also like if you're a liaison with a certain DAO and you're helping that DAO, with introductions, with creating content, with whatever you want to do, we're able to see in a simple spreadsheet, here's everyone's contributions. And this is a DAO. This is really 300 people who have full-time jobs on other things they're working on, right? So their contributions will change month to month. A system like that was very hard for us to set up. Like we have a very complicated spreadsheet with like, how do you decide what's valuable and what's not, what's worth more shares and what's worth less? It was very contentious. We had a lot of weekly meetings where we'd, get together and fully scrap the idea and start from scratch. But now we've arrived at a decently kind of like a model that works. We ported that model over to Social Graph Ventures as well. And really the model incentivizes at the first 1 year of the fund's life cycle. Fund has a life cycle of 4 or 5 years. You really have a higher incentive to contribute because the amount of options you can get is also higher. Like we've kind of had to gamify this whole system, right? So I think the answer for that has just been make it easy to monitor in one place kind of what everyone's contributed. Don't delve too much into the details, just have a higher level picture. So depending on the kind of problem you're trying to solve, it could look like my first answer or it could look like the second solution.
Yeah, I think that's super interesting. That also encourage people to pay attention to the right places, right?
100%.
Instead of just closing the door, building your own thing.
Yeah, because you want to avoid any duplication of efforts in DAOs. You want to avoid, people just all doing the same thing and thinking they're providing value, but not really. So yeah, like you said, spot on. Just trying to make sure we're able to delegate, but not like, micromanage.
Yeah. Jimmy, do you have thoughts on this?
I'm totally agree with him. Like we have not like really use any like Web3 tools within the WebDAO. We take the idea from the DAO Zero, like or G0V, like whatever like want to put effort, and they do have the authority.
Understood. I do have a very specific question for Sejal, but I hope it's not too sensitive because I understand Gitcoin recently because they ran around with Shell, and there was a lot of controversies on that front. So there are a lot of like communities discussions, controversies, and how does that, given that we're talking about the core of sustaining a DAO or public goods space is about the communities. How do you guys face such a challenge?
Thanks for asking that.
No problem.
Yeah, but definitely just also want to share that I've recently joined Gitcoin. So, a lot of things have happened when I was not there. But one of the things that I've been learning and knowing the way Gitcoin people are sort of, defining everything. Like I mentioned already, there are two parts to it. One is, a part which is credibly neutral, which is the platform, right? Which is the protocol. So anybody can run the round irrespective of what it is, right? That is something that is not going to be defined by Gitcoin because it's a credibly neutral platform. Whereas the programs, it is, that's a separate part. That is where the whole, values and everything comes in. And there's one of the posts that I can, share later if everyone is interested, or they can see at the Gitcoin Gov forum, which Kevin has posted, where he talks about modularizing the program, which essentially means that they will be like independent programs, right? Because it's that particular community that can define their values and everything for that program. And Gitcoin is just the platform they will use, right? So it has to be the balance, but that is essentially how they probably are tackling, if I can say, or that's how probably we are moving, right? So it has to be different, right? So yeah, I don't know if
Of
that
course.
answers, but yeah.
That's a very good answer. Thank you so much. So I think another question I do want to ask you guys, because we're still talking about toolings. What's the one tool that's the most important for you, for your public goods ecosystem that you can think of? If you have to pick one. And of course, why is that so important?
I can start like from a very high level. Like we have only 3 kind of tools in the whole like public ecosystem, like how to get the money, like capital, how to distribute it, and how to evaluate it. And like from my like opinion, we do not have the good product like on the market yet. Like for
Yeah.
both three like track.
But that's the biggest demand, right?
Yeah, yeah.
But that's three different things that you were talking about. Where would you start, and how would you do
Get
that?
the money. Like yeah, of course. Like if we do not have the capital in the first place, then like how did you like do anything? Yeah.
Understood.
Yeah, anything that Gitcoin makes. I'm just biased, but definitely, I think Grandstack. I really like Grandstack because I feel like, uh, the way it lets us experience the power of quadratic funding is incredible. And now going on, they're experimenting with a lot of other mechanisms as well. I think it's extremely important to have have such tooling where people can run rounds and probably experience the power of it. And I'll just take this moment to also shill my workshop tomorrow. It's at 11 a.m. in the workshop room, and it is very special because this is a round we are running. So it's going to be a live round where people or contributors of GovZero, DAO0, and FabDAO are going to participate. We have a matching pool of $3,000, and we will spin up the round live, and people will apply. So please make sure that you attend the workshop at 11 a.m. tomorrow. Thanks.
Yeah, definitely. That's definitely going to be very interesting. Abby, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, nothing new to add except for communication tools, stuff that we use every day, like
Yeah.
Telegram or Discord. But like honestly, I think it's time for like a more Web3 native social tool to emerge, and I'm definitely like positive that that might come up in the next couple of years, especially with the kind of companies we've been evaluating at Social Graph Ventures, right? I think another tool, maybe a little bit more like tricky for a lot of people here, just like how do you keep track of governance, right? Like I want to be able to see Gitcoin's like forum. I want to be able to see someone's discourse platform. Like that's another, like I guess, problem to solve. I don't have a tool that's very like readily available yet. What I use, I'm personally biased, is actually Zerion. So for example, at Hydra, I have my Hydra tokens that represent my ownership in Hydra, right? And if you have a Zerion wallet, we have a section called perks. Within the perks section, if you have a governance proposal coming up for, say, Maker or for Hydra or any token that you hold, you just have all of that listed in your perks section, and you're very easily able to, set a notification for a certain, expiry date for that proposal. So you just make sure you just, have the information in one place, especially if you're, everyone here is chronically online, pretty much involved in multiple projects. So like, just tools to simplify your life. So spreadsheets,
Keeping everyone on the
communication,
same
and that.
page.
Exactly. Yeah. I think that's the only thing to add in addition to what you've already mentioned.
I'm also curious. So when you talk about Web3 based communication tools, what would you expect, or what would you think is important that the current communication tools doesn't really provide?
Yeah, good question. Very simply, right? Like Forecaster has 25,000 members. Everyone, including like crypto founders, Vitalik, Juan, everyone's active on there. Compare that to Blue Sky, which maybe has 3 million members, Discord and Twitter, which has 100 plus million members. I think the difference really is we can build from bottom up. Like for example, the tools that we're evaluating on top of Forecaster, clients that are being built on top of Forecaster, right? There's Reddit-like platforms, Discord-like platforms. There's a lot of tools where now you could actually own your own social graph. Maybe you can create the UX however you'd like, but still port over all your community members, your social graphs. So I'd say I maybe involve Web3 native chat like XMTP. Like for me, it's more ideological than like, oh, the user experience is going to be a million times better. And the ideological reason is big enough. If you have the tech that supports it and you can scale, why not, right? There's going to be a lot of tools that come up where it starts from small growth hacks and conferences like this. If you were at ETHCC, you probably saw a Coinbase wallet with XMTP, right? They had a base cafe. You could actually buy coffee with your on-chain funds. Like, I think it starts off with gimmicks like that. So for me, I hate Discord. Like, I hate it, with my soul. I use this app called text.com. So it's texts.com. So essentially, I can aggregate my Discord, Telegram, Instagram, Messenger, WhatsApp, all of this in one feed. So I just wake up, I go to unread, I'll see all my unread messages across every tool. It's more of a framework for me to prioritize. So I think like this still isn't ideal. Like text.com is still a very Web2 approach to solve this, right? So it's more ideological. Like, hey, this exists. Everyone in the space loves a lot of gimmicks like this, so it's kind of a good match to solve for.
100%. I think we're almost on time. What do you guys have anything that you want to share that maybe I haven't asked, or maybe Sejal has another workshop somewhere? I'm kidding. But anything you guys would like to share?
I want to echo to like his previous statement, like to keep the tool as simple as possible, because FabDAO recently do the experiment about the Gitcoin stake, like from Gitcoin, and to be honest, it's super difficult to use and not like super natural. So in the end, we just do the original transaction and do the QV calculation ourselves. Yeah.
Awesome.
Right. I mean, I can just give a shout out here. I mean, knowing the kind of people here in the room, I'll say like another community really that I was very like glad to be a part of this year was Zuzalu, the network state. I mean, and I bring this up because Gary Chang, for example, from Gitcoin, he just left Gitcoin recently to like work on, bringing the next versions of Zuzalu full time, collaborating with governments around the world. So whatever it is, if you're working in DeSci, longevity, AI, crypto, it's an interesting community. So I think a lot more network states are being built. There's this tool called Fora.co. They're going to be like a launch pad for many different network states. So like, I think that's probably the next evolution in a lot of ways of like what we see now in terms of like more public goods communities. A lot of these communities will evolve into like state network states, or like having their own IRL presence, with summits and conferences or whatnot. So like, yeah, just encourage y'all, no matter what your interests, so like try to be part of one of these network states and just really, kind of experience what that's like. Because for me, I think that was one of my biggest value adds this year compared to any of the conferences or summits I've been to.
Amazing. Sejal?
Yeah, I think it's extremely important for us to talk to people who work a lot on ground. And I just want to give a shout out to my friend Carlos, who's sitting there. He is also he's the founder of Web3 Beach, definitely one of the communities which I got inspired from, and I take a lot of inspiration from his work and try to translate it into my work at Greenpill. I think it's super important to really experience what we sort of do on internet and how drastically it is different from things on ground. It just keeps us it gives us a really good idea of what is really needed and how to really go about a lot of things. So yeah, I think just talking to people who really work on ground really helps and is super important.
Wonderful. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your wisdom. Thank you for your experience.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.